Oh, hello, good morning. Hello, can you hear me?
And now.
I can hear some voices. That's good. Yes. Right. Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
Welcome to this exploration of this conjunction. Right. And I'm just going to have to say at the beginning, some of you might know that I was waiting yesterday evening for a doctor to phone me to let me know whether or not my leg's basically just going to take a bit of time to get better, or if I'm in grave danger of having a stroke. And it didn't call. So quite unprofessionally, I'm going to have to leave my phone on just in case, because, you know, it kind of makes a difference to your day as to whether or not you're going to kind of, you know, just kind of saunter through life or kind of be at risk of becoming something dreadful that you saw when you was a child. So, yeah, I do need to leave that open. So I do apologize about that. But
She done.
kind of with any luck you'll ring, but also kind of with any luck you won't, you know.
Oh gosh, David, that's horrendous.
Yeah, no apology necessary at all. It's completely fine. Completely.
Well, good, thank you. Well, right, just let another person.
Hopefully they do ring.
Yeah, there's still a few other people that are due to kind of come in. Right, yes, well, welcome to this look at this conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. In fact, let's just begin by having a look at it. So this is what it looks like just on its own. There you go. So this is on the 21st of December this year. It's from the perspective of being in Avebury, or basically Northern Hemisphere. And this is approximately, well, in fact, it's at about 4:05 in the afternoon, GMT. So the sun would have already set. And the reason I've kind of chosen this particular time of day to show you this is because this is a good viewing point. Right? So with the sun just down below the horizon, if you've got a clear view of the western horizon at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then you'll see this bright spot of Jupiter conjunct Saturn setting in the west. If you're within traveling distance and it's a clear sky, you're welcome to pop round and kind of stand out in the garden and have a look, because there's a clear view here, you know. But wherever you can find a high space and you can see right through to the western horizon at around 4 o'clock GMT, you'll see this bright conjunction kind of happening. So a lot of people are making a big thing of this. So what we're going to do this morning is have a little bit of a look at the history of it and a bit of an idea of the magnitude of the portents of this conjunction and see whether or not they hold merit, because they might not. We'll have a look at the nature of oh, what was that? Somebody spoke and I didn't hear what they said. No, okay. Yes, so we'll have a look at the cycle itself, and then we're going to finish off before we have a tea break, looking at this from a mundane astrology perspective. In other words, look at the impact that it has on a global sense, with specific reference to the UK and America and China. Right. A little bit, we're going to look at the history of it a little bit, and also the present, you know, the next, the meanings of this conjunction going forwards in time. Then after we've had a tea break, we'll look at the potential meanings that this has for all of us, each in turn. Right? So we do lots of little mini readings. They're going to be roughly in alphabetical order, but there's a couple of people that need to leave early or early-ish. So I've put those people in first. Okay. So, but for the rest of us, it'll be alphabetical. And as always, I'll be at the end. So if you've got the stamina to keep going to the end, then you get to find out maybe what it has an effect on me. But first of all, I think we'll have a look at what this is. Now, if you can think of a bit of a kind of like a chasing game, in a sense. So you know, if you think of like Jupiter kind of orbiting the sun, but also Saturn is orbiting the sun as well, but more slowly. So if this is Jupiter and Saturn and they're both together, as Jupiter goes round, Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the sun. So you might think, oh, there'll be a conjunction every 12 years. But this reference point of Saturn also moves as well. So while Jupiter takes 12 years to go round, Saturn moves a bit. So then Jupiter has to do a little bit more to catch up. And then it kind of goes round and it has to do a little bit more to catch up again. So you get this kind of pattern. Let me know if everyone, can you all see that clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, good. Okay, so at the beginning of the cycle, for example, there's Saturn conjunct Jupiter. After 5.9 years, Saturn's moved 72 degrees and Jupiter's gone all the way around halfway, 180 degrees. And then by the time you get to just over 11 years, Saturn has gone around 144 degrees and Jupiter's done a complete circuit of 360. So by the time Jupiter catches up again, it's about 20 years, 19.8 years. Okay, so that's the dance of these two. So although there's a lot of hoo-ha on the internet and things at the moment, this conjunction is fairly regular. It happens every roughly every 20 years. Now, one of the things that's being talked about in the press and things like this is that this is the first time this has happened since the Middle Ages. You might have read somewhere on the internet that it's the first time it's happened since 1623, which is a funny thing to say about something that happens once every 20 years. Don't you think? So why? What's the big thing about 1623 and 2020? There must be something, because this is really, it's just like a season, you know. Sorry, somebody keeps writing in the chat box. Right, okay. Yeah, so the reason is, I guess sometimes people look for a thing to talk about, but this is the conjunction in 1623. And you can notice that the planets, they're both at the same degree. They're both at 6 degrees of Leo, but also they're at exactly the same minute. So in astrology, when you have an aspect like a conjunction, we think of it with like an engineering tolerance of plus or minus. So in a natal birth chart, planets can be considered conjunct up to 15 degrees apart if you do kind of William Lillier's way of calculating aspects. But in contemporary astrology, a conjunction will be considered maybe 8, so 0 degrees plus or minus 8 degrees either side. Think of it like an orb or an aura around the degree. But when we're doing forecast work, when I'm doing forecast work, I do everything to a ratio of plus or minus 1 degree. So if these very tight tolerances, it has to be exact. So to find a conjunction that's 0, i.e. they're the exact same degree, is a powerful conjunction. To then find that they're not only conjunct to the degree, but also to the minute, is the equivalent of one planet being behind the other. It's like an eclipse, like a perfect eclipse. Right? So the last one of those that took place in 1623, the others since have been a few minutes out here, a few minutes out there. On the 19th of December this year, the conjunction goes exact on the 19th. So here you can see Saturn and Jupiter at 0 degrees Aquarius, but one's at 15 minutes, the other one's at 1 minute. So there's a 14-minute difference. That's really close, but not as close as 1623, right? Just a few days later, on the 21st of December, they're at 0 degrees Aquarius, and that is only 1 minute between them. So it's still not as tight as 1623, but it's close enough, 1 minute. And that's the closest it's been since 1623 out of all the 20-year periods since. And that's why some astronomers have said, you know, this is a very close thing, and then journalists pick up of it and make a big thing of it. Just like you might see the occasional thing about a supermoon. You ever seen those things? It's going to be a supermoon. Yeah, you know that's not an astronomical term. The astronomical term is perigee and apogee, which means in the orbit being closest to the Earth and further away from the Earth. Like perigee and apogee, that's the astronomical terminology. An Australian journalist, mainly the Americans, an Australian journalist coined the phrase supermoon. So it's going to be a supermoon, right? And next thing, the whole New Age community start talking about supermoons, and all the astronomers are going, "What on earth are they on about? It doesn't exist." You know, but journalists like to embellish and dramatize, and so this has been kind of embellished and dramatized a bit. But then has it? You know, in a lot of ancient texts or old astrological texts, the people would consider the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter to be a great portent of change, a harbinger of doom, the things by which kingdoms rise or the cycle by which kingdoms fall. And part of the reason for that, I'll illustrate with my birth chart, but calculated in old money, or how astrology would have looked prior to Johannes Kepler. So this is my birth chart with, you notice the outer planets are missing. So Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto aren't there. But all of these things that we have in life, all the things that we experience as human beings, are still symbolized by the planets that are available. So we now might think of death, for example, being represented by the astrological Pluto. But what do you do? What symbol represents death before the discovery of Pluto? And the answer is Saturn. Saturn used to be the ruler of both Capricorn and Aquarius. Jupiter was the ruler of both Pisces and Sagittarius. Where, you know, Mars was both the ruler of Aries and Scorpio. So the things that we attribute to Pluto were lumped onto Saturn. So Saturn meant what Saturn means to us now, plus everything that Pluto means as well. Jupiter means everything that Jupiter means to an astrologer now, plus everything that we attribute to Neptune. So for the ancients who only had the planets they could see with the naked eye, Jupiter and Saturn were the outposts of the solar system. They were the great giants. They were the huge gods. And so when they come together, that's a massive thing. It's like spirit and death walk together. It's like karma and life, but also hope and protection walk together. That's big, right? And so when these things happen, you know, people would kind of say that there's great meaning here. One of the first people to write about this was a chap called Johannes Kepler. This is Mr. Kepler. He was around, when was he around? Around 1570, I think he was born. He died in the early 1600s. And it's hip to him that we get our current contemporary perspectives on aspects and divisions of the birth chart using harmony rather than just sacred geography. And he was one of the first people to propose that the Star of Bethlehem was indeed a conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. And from the introduction course, I know some of you have done the introduction course a long time ago, right? But for those that have done the intro course a long time ago, you might remember that we looked at the Star of Bethlehem. This is in 7 BC. So here's Saturn and Jupiter conjunct on the horizon rising. And so this would have seemed like a bright star in the east, because when the light of Jupiter touches the light of Saturn, it turns into a big blob when they're really tight and really close together. and you see there's only a few minutes between them. They're both exactly the same degree. So, was this the Star of Bethlehem? Could it have been something else? There was a really good Sky at Night program about 6 or 7 years ago, where they looked at one Christmas, they looked at what could the astronomy of the Star of Bethlehem be, and they proposed 3 theories, and this was one of them, but it's my favorite one. There's an astrologer who used to be a reverend, the Reverend Pamela Crane, and she uses this conjunction to support the story of the Nativity. But also there are other astrology used in the Nativity story to support astrology. Either which way, to be a magi, you've got to be an astrologer. So therefore it's about being wise, and we're wise enough to look, which is cool. Now, in terms of the history of this, I did a bit of fishing about, and I started to adapt it, the visual of this, so that it's kind of Rowan friendly. But it was about 2 o'clock this morning and I gave up. Right. Because I've been drifting in and out of sleep all day. And yeah. So anyway, I'll show you the first page and the last page. But this is a list of these conjunctions going back to 581 BC. And so you can see, just looking at this, how often this appears in Earth signs. Right? And then it switches. You'll find that as you kind of look through these, there is a lot of them, right? There's about 7 pages of this. We're in the 1200s already. We'll just skip forwards to where we are now. Here we are now. So the last one was in the year 2000, and it appeared in Taurus, 22 degrees Taurus. And of course, this one is going to appear at 0 degrees Aquarius. So there is another kind of interpretation that one can find from this, and that is that the last few have taken place mostly in Earth signs. And so we're kind of switching from Earth to air. That's an interesting thing, especially if you think about Pluto is going to change signs in 2023. It's going to change from a Capricorn to Aquarius. That's a significant thing. Yes. Now, if you've been, do any of you kind of follow the passage of Pluto with reference to current affairs and world events? Anybody? No? Is that a no?
Only in the sense that I join your UK forecast, David. But apart from that, I'm wild.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant. All right. Then for those that don't or haven't, a very brief thing. Pluto went through Scorpio from about 1984 until around 1993. In 1984, there was a lot of things crashing and demolishing. The Berlin Wall came down. The Soviet Union collapsed. Apartheid collapsed in South America. A nuclear reactor collapsed at Chernobyl in that period of time. That's very plutonic as well. A lot of structures of British freedom collapsed. There was the Freedom of Movement Act, poll tax riots, all things like that. There were miners being attacked by police. There were druids being attacked by police as well in that period of time. In 1990, if you lived in Britain, very few people talked about religion unless they were deeply entrenched in their particular religious thing, staunchly Catholic, strongly Presbyterian or something, maybe heard Jehovah's Witness, but not many people talked about religion on a daily basis. When Pluto went into Sagittarius in about 93, and it was there until 2005, by the time Pluto had finished going through Sagittarius, religion was on almost every front page, almost every day, because of Twin Towers attacks and, jihadi movements and things like this. This kind of battle between the Abrahamic religions surfaced again, and was kind of almost a constant daily issue. Pluto went into Capricorn in 2005. Capricorn is the sign of structure. The structure of a society is its laws, its economy. The structure of the earth is the rocks, the crust of the earth itself. You know, all life on Earth is carbon-based, and Saturn rules Capricorn, and Saturn rules carbon. So since 2005, there have been a lot of things to do with economy, with law, with our relationship with polymers and plastics. We've filled the ocean with plastics. There are microbeads in krill. You know, if there are microbeads floating through our bodies and getting into our food chain, Pluto, the planet of death, is literally making its presence felt through polymers and plastics and resins of the karmic consequence of how humans deal with carbon. Anybody ever thought about Pluto like that? No? Okay. Yes. Well, Pluto is about to change. It's going to go into Aquarius in 2023. It will be there for about 20 years. So the dynamical difference that we've experienced on planet Earth, if you think about Sagittarius and religion, the period through Capricorn and economy and plastics, then if you take that magnitude of change as it's gone through those passages and transpose that into the key of Aquarius, then we're in for some interesting and yet very turbulent times. Reference things Aquarius. This conjunction happening at 0 Aquarius, just prior to Pluto going into Aquarius, seems to tie in synchronously for me. You know, it's almost like this conjunction is the prelude to what's going to come. At least that's how it seems to me. But in order for us to get some kind of reference point, we need some evidence. You know, as I always kind of say to clients, one of the reasons for talking about a person's current life phase when I do the forecast, first of all, is so that their brain has evidence of whether or not I'm any good. You know, is this person worth listening to? Because you can have theory about astrology. You can have a wall of certificates behind you, and all that does is prove that you can print pieces of paper, right? The thing that actually makes it worth listening to is whether or not you can describe the past accurately. Because if you can describe the past accurately, then maybe there's something in the method. And that's what we need to check. Anyone agree with that? That we do need to check this?
Definitely.
Yeah, okay. Well, one way of checking it is by looking at the last conjunction, right? So what I thought we'd do is we'd look at the 2020 conjunction and the 2000 conjunction through the lenses of 3 countries, through the UK, through America, and China. Right? So does this conjunction, when we look at the 2001, describe what's happened for America or Britain or China in the last 20 years? If it does, then maybe it will be interesting to look at what the next 20 years is like. And if it doesn't, well, then it's all nonsense. All right. Okay. So, yeah, let's have a look. I can't remember what order these are in. So you'll have to excuse me while I kind of look at it at the same time as you going, what's that? Right. So what is that? I got a feeling that's the UK for the 2001. Yeah. Right. Where's the conjunction? There it is. It's up here. And the UK's 8th house. Okay. So this suggests that for the last 20 years, the UK has fallen into a hole of very intense and deep navel gazing. Is that the case, do you think, as a country?
Yeah.
This suggests that in the last 20 years, the UK has experienced in its collective psyche repressed issues and shadows emerging up and coming up to the surface. Has anybody noticed anything around, I don't know, sexual abuse of children surfacing in the last 20 years, or crime, or potential corruption, or I don't know, governments telling lies, or lying to the Queen? Anything around subterfuge?
I'd certainly say so.
Yeah. Any kind of problems with sharing resources with other countries? Anything like that happening in the last 20 years? I don't know. Let's have a look at the aspects. Hold on a second. Right. So now you're going to find we're going to be looking at this kind of illustration a lot through today. So this is the top part of a synastry grid. The planets along the top are the UK's planets. The planets down the side are the planets of the conjunction. So what we're interested in is the Jupiter-Saturn line. And you notice that the aspects are the same because they're next to each other. Right? So a key thing that stands out for me is that the last Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was exactly square the UK's Saturn. Just get your head around that for a second. The last Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was exactly square the UK's planet of government and economy. Oh, whoopee-doo. Yes, this would suggest that we've had a bit of an Eeyore time in the last 20 years. How's this doing for accuracy so far?
Seems about right.
Yeah, it does seem a bit. The conjunction is making a triseptile to the UK's Mercury, which suggests miscommunication in the UK's media and confusion within the UK's infrastructure. Yeah. The conjunction's making a binoval to the UK's Pluto, which suggests some powerful things to do with stuff that happens under the surface, subterfuge and things, maybe even people being poisoned in Salisbury. It was was it Vietnam Lenko, the guy who was given the polonium poisoning?
It sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, when was that? Was that around 2000? That was in the 2000s, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I'm just trying to think.
Yeah, around 2004-ish, 2005-ish, something like that, I think. Yeah. So that's a part of a potential of that, subterfuge things and spies. There's a novile to the node. So the UK could have stridently gone out on its own, believing it's doing the right thing for itself.
David, it was 2006. It says November 2006. Litvanenko.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, that falls in this pattern. Thank you. Thanks, Deb.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a bipyridecum to the part of fortune. So again, that suggests that the UK would have been full of kind of bright hope for itself. A sesquiquadrate to the ascendant. It's out of tune with its neighbors. If this was a person, they'd be having a cranky moment. Yeah, and there's a semi-square to the midhaven, which means it has high aspirations but can't quite reach them, basically. Okay. Does that describe the general tone of the UK in the last 20 years?
I'd say so.
Yeah, it does seem a bit kind of doesn't it?
Had a lot of change with the internet and communications and things coming on in the last 20 years, haven't we?
Yeah, we have indeed. And also the amount of misinformation and disinformation, which is very kind of Neptunian with these septiles here. America then. In the last 20 years, the conjunction appeared in their 6th house in America. So this suggests that America has also been doing a kind of a review of how it does its things, its laws, its bylaws, its procedures, its what it does with its resources, how it goes about managing its own affairs. Yeah, there's been a fair bit of that, I think. You know, Obama kind of swept into office promising to get rid of Guantanamo, and then suddenly found that because of the nature of the houses, you know, the Congress and the Senate, he couldn't get legislation through, and so couldn't do anything about it. And that kind of getting itself tangled. I think there have been 2 occasions, haven't there, in the last 20 years, where American politics has literally ground to a halt because it couldn't function, because there was a stalemate in the House of Legislation. So that's all a bit going in a way.
Obamacare.
Obamacare. Yeah, that's to do with health and things as well. Yeah, even the emergence of Trump has been quite going in a way. It's incited a great deal of criticism. In fact, if you think the beginning of this conjunction was the beginning of Bush, you know, and we were all kind of ridiculing him. Now we're thinking, you know, he could have been immenser compared to what we've been experiencing in the last 4 years. Yeah. Yes. Let's have a look at the aspects to America. The conjunction was Septile, America's sun. So America has had a kind of a sense of an idealism about it. I mean, there was something rather kind of hopeful about Barack Obama as a kind of a sense of the society of America repairing and healing itself. You know, for there to be a black president, even though Trump even thought he wasn't a proper American. But, you know, that was a great thing to take place. There's a sextile to the Mercury, which suggests that there's been some interesting rhetoric coming out of America. Its literature has been on a good foot. Novile to the Venus, so America's been self-protecting its own resources, which it has been as well. There's a Pyridechem to the Mars, so there's been a little bit of conflict and warfare going on, which has been fairly successful in its way. You know, they did get Obama in the end, I guess. You know, Bin Laden. That's what I meant. Osama bin Laden is what I meant to say. There's a semi-square to the Jupiter. So in the last 20 years, some of America's international reputation has soured. It kind of went down with Bush, then up with Obama, and then down with Trump. So yeah, there's a biquintile to the Saturn, suggesting that America's had political problems, infrastructure problems, and also some economic problems as well. And the crash happened in all of that. There's an undecile to the Chiron, suggesting that America can heal itself in this time. And Obamacare, am I right in saying that Obamacare has widened the net of healthcare for the poor, so that more poor people now have access to essential medicines?
Yeah, that was the point, but it's been reversed now.
Well, I know Trump's reversing it. Yeah. That sense of universal care and compassion, or what other countries call socialism, is shown as well by the conjunction being trine, America's Neptune. So there's been a flourishing of the arts as well. There's been more artistry coming out of America. I'm not up to speed with contemporary cinema or music since the year 2000, so I have no idea if the artistry or the music that's been coming out of America has been any good or not. But the suggestion from this is that it has been.
It's more grassroots, like in terms of indie films and stuff.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. There. And there's a quadrinovile to the ascendant, which again suggests that America's been able to flex its muscles in the last 20 years. Okay. What do we think of that? Is that about right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Let's have a look at now China for the last 20 years. I have to confess, I'm not that au fait with China at all. There might be one or two people in the room here that have got a bit of an awareness of things of a Chinese nature. Yeah, if anyone can let us know anything, that would be cool. So this conjunction happens, Saturn Jupiter, in the 3rd house, which suggests that China's communication ability has broadened, and also its internal roads and infrastructure is the people's ability to travel about has improved as well. Does anybody know anything about the infrastructure and things of China over the last 20 years?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who believe they've built an incredibly huge Silk Road around the world. So they have been going into countries and suggesting they'll help, and don't worry, we'll pay for it. You can just pay us back. And what they've been doing is sorting out the ports across Africa. I've seen it a lot in Mozambique, building bridges and ports and infrastructure that actually the people in Mozambique don't need. And so everybody's been going, that's interesting. They now have their own city north of Johannesburg with its own police force in place. And it's all going on very quietly, but they've been building, and I thought it was just across Africa, but I recently saw something that was saying that it's across a lot of Asia, and reaching in, and so as far as building roads, bridges, and when they go into the country, they don't use people in the country, they bring their own workforce. And so it's pretty much, for... Right.
Can I ask, do you know, this city, just as an example, that's just slightly north of Joburg, does it use the indigenous language in its street signs and things, or is there Chinese language being used in?
I actually can't say one way or the other.
Because the suggestion of this is that there's some kind of drive to promote Chinese language.
Yeah, no, I would very much suspect
the third house thing. Let's have a look at the aspects. See if anything that you're telling us about pops up in here. Oh yeah, there is. Look at that. Jupiter is the planet of international travel, right? And the conjunction was trine China's Jupiter, which suggests China is moving. And it's expanding its arms around the world, literally. Yeah. It's having some problems with its own identity in the last 20 years. There's been a little bit of a kind of, it doesn't quite suit itself, if that makes sense. I don't know if that means because China is obviously it's an ancient civilization, isn't it? Even though the modern version is fairly new, but it's been around a long time. And yes, so whether or not the way that it does politics now, kind of this opening up of China that's really kind of taken place in the last 30 years, I guess 20, 30 years, whether or not that suits the political background of it.
Well, a friend of mine who lived in, I think she was in Shanghai, there was a very much closed internet system, so she couldn't speak to anyone. They didn't have Facebook. They'd shut down a lot of social media. I think that's opening up a little bit now. So whether, so things like rhino horn and Chinese medicine and things like that have been so frowned upon by the rest of, internationally, whether any of that information is getting through to, and their identity with who they are and how they do things is shifting a little bit. This is over the last 20 years, isn't it? That this is saying that this has been happening. But with people traveling and going and building things in different places, the knowledge must be getting back, even if they're trying to shut it down.
Well,
there is something else that's been happening though, because, and this I think would tie in very much with that identity issue, because all this time the economy's been opening up, and as you say, we've seen China exporting Chinese values and Chinese ideas in inverted commas, but at the same time the politics of China has not opened up at all. It's become ever more repressive, and partly because it has all these problems with places like Xinjiang and Tibet and all these parts of China which aren't Han Chinese. And it's been incredibly oppressive at holding down minorities, Muslim minorities. So yes, we see Chinese people wearing Western clothes, Chinese businesses buying up Western businesses, Chinese companies exporting across the globe. But in terms of the actual political system, it's just as repressive and backwards looking as it's been for the last probably 60, 70 years, I would say.
And I think that's shown here. This tridecile to the moon. So in mundane astrology, the moon represents the people. And this tridecile suggests that there's kind of a different tone, a different approach to how it handles its own population. And there are these other deciles here as well. So China's, it's not quite an identity crisis. The sesquiquadrate from the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction to the sun, if you think of the sun as the identity, but it's also the power. So it's like the core point of power. And this sesquiquadrate suggests that it's having a bit of like an internal fight with itself. And the people are kind of becoming the victims of that.
Look at Hong Kong too.
Yeah, yeah.
Hong Kong.
Yeah, while at the same time it's extending its reach out. It's trying to Jupiter. And there's an aggression as well with this tripyridecum to the Mars. Sorry, Deb?
I was just going to say, I found out literally in the last week, speaking to somebody in the Canary Islands, and she was saying she had, when I left the Canaries about 5 years ago, there was a steady growth of big Chinese warehouses that are selling everything. And she said that has got worse in the last 5 years. And I said, well, why is that? She said, because all the local little ferreterias are going out of business because they just sell everything, plastics and gardening stuff, pet things, you know. And she said they've got an agreement with the government. They don't pay tax for the first 5 years. And I was like, that really is quite an aggressive expansion into Spain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that might be because they built something for them and they've put that into their, you know, they've built the port, or that's what they've been doing in Mozambique. They've got them apps, they've taken all of their fishing rights.
Right. Okay. And there's this aspect to the Mars. Right. Okay. So far then, seems to be something worth looking at. Yeah. Okay. So this is where we are now. Or at least where we're next. So here's the conjunction of 2020 taking place in the UK's fourth house, the fourth house of the home and the homeland. So here we are, there's Uranus in the 8th, having our divorce from Europe and focusing our attention on ourselves and going inward. And yes, Little Englanders are finding that they're becoming Little England. And the focus of the next 20 years will be literally on whether or not the UK remains the United Kingdom with 4 countries, or 3, or 2, or just 1. Who are we? What are we? That's really what it'll be. Yeah, that's the focus of the UK over the next 20 years. Trying to establish ourselves on our own floaty little island. Yes, yes. Not much more you can say about that, really, I don't think. But I do think it's apt that literally within 30 days of this conjunction taking place, we'll have signed off from the EU formally, with a deal or without a deal. With a government who promise oven-ready deals and then they don't exist. Yeah. Yeah, let's have a look at the aspects. Do you really want to look at this? Right. So here's the conjunction in the UK's 4th house of the home and of itself, beneath the horizon, as far away from relating with anyone else as you can get. And as soon as you look at the aspects, the first thing that strikes me is there's an opposition to Jupiter. So the UK's on one side of the conjunctions on one side of the planet, and foreign affairs and international relations are on the other side of the world. They're as far away as you can possibly get. Yes. Meanwhile, though, there is a trine to Uranus. Right. Okay. So there's a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius, making a trine to the UK's Uranus. This suggests there could be a revolution. There could be a revolution in electrical technologies. There could be a landing of aliens. There could be a resurgence of an acceptance of astrology. They could find some new henges. Or there could be a lot of civil unrest and the British people sticking two fingers up at the government and doing what they want to do in their own way, or the country itself doing that to the world. Right. So if there's an opposition to Jupiter, which suggests we don't want anything to do with jolly foreigner, and there's a trine to Uranus, which suggests we want to go our own way, and if we want a tattoo, we'll get one. You put those two things together, and you've basically got Brexit. Yeah, there's a triseptile to Mars, which suggests that our military presence, our power could be diffused, so we won't be that aggressive, or if we are aggressive, then it won't come across as being. It'll be a bit kind of wimpy, in a way. There's a quintile to Neptune. That's good. That suggests that our artistic creativity will be really sharp and really good. We like that. Although our apparent power will be diminished, and anyone who wants to kind of be British with bravado will find that that's not working. But the essential power is still there. This undecile to Pluto suggests that UK might go through a bit of a spell of seeming kind of introverted and losing its clout in the world, but as a nation, it won't kind of collapse as such. It's got staying power with that undecile to Pluto. The quintile to the node's interesting because that suggests almost like an act of grand self-delusion. That suggests that it thinks it's all right. It would have to. The British psyche will feel it's all right, mate. We're doing all right. We're doing everything the right way. That's how it'll seem. There's a quadrinova to the midhaven, which suggests that if it has ambitions, it could achieve them. So if there are any group ambitions, I don't know if that means the Olympics or something like that, but we could fare well in some way with that. It's not that bad. I think that this almost kind of diametrical opposition to having anything to do with other countries is erroneous. Really, I just think that's so isolationist. For the conjunction to be in the 4th house and opposing Jupiter, that's just mad. You know, in a global world, it's just crazy. But then,
could that trine to Uranus, given the conjunctions in the 4th house, manifest itself as in terms of revolution, as the 4th house of the family, the home, the United Kingdom, actually tearing itself apart?
Absolutely, yeah. Which is why I said, you know, the UK could be 1, 4, or 3, or 2, or 1 country. Yeah, because the Scots, in a sense, are kind of ruled by the Tories, and they don't vote for them. You know, and that's been the case for decades now. The only way that Labour were getting into power is because of the Scottish Labour Party. But now most of Scotland vote SNP. Socialists don't have any kind of say in England, really. It's just that, you know, the voting map is a sea of blue. So the English have got a completely different relationship with society as Scotland has.
True for Wales too.
Yeah, yeah, and Northern Ireland's a thing on its own, you know, as well. So, yeah, I think I actually have a lot of sympathy for the Scottish drive for independence.
Yeah.
I think from a perspective of fairness, the idea that they're ruled by a minority of people in the South that have got nothing to do with how they want to do things is really kind of unfair, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, it could represent like a fragmentation of that.
Is there anything to suggest that we will pull together and just focus on our home and get our home in order?
Well, that's one of the possibilities of the conjunction being in the fourth house, is that the UK ignores the rest of the world and focuses on itself. But with the trying to the Uranus in the mix as well,
that's the rebellious bit.
There's a possibility of, you know, now a revolution. If you think about it, the UK has been fragmented for years, so a revolution could be unification. You know,
and things up to the rest of the world, which is kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, I mean, if the Scots suddenly wanted to be part of England, and if, you know, even if Northern Ireland, I mean, if that becomes united as a country, so if Northern Ireland kind of becomes unified with the rest of Ireland, so we lose Northern Ireland as a part of the UK, that's a healing process, you know, for a lot of the population, not for all of it, you know. But kind of Northern Ireland is built on fragmentation, isn't it, and division. Yeah.
The trend could be like technological unification, right?
Yeah. Well, that kind of happens in a sense with, you know, the internet and things like this now anyway.
Oh yes, Dave, I'd like to talk about that. Is there anything about a technological revolution with business at all represented in that aspect?
Not necessarily business as such. There isn't a kind of but there certainly is with potential electrical technologies. We could be some kind of leader or come up with some kind of inventions that do amazing things.
I'm quite interested in that because with cryptocurrency, we could set ourselves up in that way. I wondered whether that was shown in that chart at all, as a new banking system, which is, you know, is a revolution, if you like, and that I'm seeing that certainly would have what I'm looking at. I'm wondering whether England might be a leader on that, you know, because obviously with the financial markets changing, would that be shown, you know?
Not specifically with economy. No. There is this thing at the end here, this quadrinova with the midhaven. If remember I mentioned that if the UK has aspirations, it could reach them.
Yeah.
So if, for example, being a leader in cryptocurrency economies is an aspiration of the UK, then it'll have the drive to reach it.
Yeah.
You know, if winning the Olympics is an aspiration, it'll have the drive to do that. If even I know you can't win the Olympics, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So whatever the country's kind of goals are, there's the potential for it to kind of achieve them because it'll have the drive to do so.
Yeah.
Although a part of its impetus is kind of a bit foggy with this triseptile to the Mars. But yeah, if there are kind of technical goals, yeah, it looks like it
thank you.
But not specifically with reference just to economy.
No, okay.
David, can I ask, we're seeing far more and more protests across the country against the restrictions with respect to the virus. I know straight away you were seeing this in terms of Brexit and everything, but could it be something with this, because the protests are growing?
What they're trying to do,
for another poll tax moment.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Anything that's kind of, you know, the peasants are revolting, right?
Yeah. Especially with Aquarius there as well. I find that very interesting.
Well, indeed, yes. 0 degrees Aquarius in the fourth house. You know, this sense of the fourth, when you think of that as the homeland, it is the people looking at themselves, You know, think of it like if it was a person, it would be deep meditation. It would be self-discovery. It would be, you know, the UK wants to go on a self-development course kind of thing. Who am I? What am I about? Peeling away the layers of the self, discovering more of yourself, living your own truth, all those sorts of things as an individual. Now, if you think about that as a nation doing that, so who are we? Where are we? What do we like? What don't we like? And because it's in Aquarius isn't necessarily just out and out rebellion. If you think of the word revolution means to turn, right? So revolutions can mean that something turns. So if you have you know, 4 countries that are kind of wedded together by agreement, which is what the UK is, and they're all quite fragmented, if you turn that, that could turn into unification and peace. If you turn it another way, that could turn into being fractured and blasting apart. We don't know which direction that's going to go in. We just know it's going to change. You know, if you think of a population being hoodwinked by some numbers on a bus, and then the same team that did that get back into power by talking about an oven-ready deal that doesn't exist. You could have a population that becomes rather kind of tetchy about that, because the British do tend to be somewhat belligerent. You know, look at the voting on Strictly Come Dancing, and that shows you exactly how. You know, the person who cannot dance stays in the competition because we're going, fuck the system, fuck you. You know, we had red hair like 40 years ago. So, you know, we're not necessarily that good at conforming. We're a belligerent lot. And yeah, this conjunction falling into the 4th house of the British psyche, you know, which is inclined to kind of have Sex Pistols and things pop out occasionally. And then there's this trine to Uranus, yeah, where this is also about social reform as well.
Interestingly, when I've been traveling around, and a lot of people have said, I think Britain will be okay. I mean, it's such a massive powerhouse of finance, you know, that financial economic thing. And as Chris was saying, I find that very interesting what you're saying, Chris, because the Jupiter thing, you know, there's a lot changed with COVID as far as business travel has happened more than anything else. I think people will still go and see their family, but business wise, listening to a lot of IT people like high up in IT that have friends, they're saying that, you know, they're offsetting a lot of things with the amount of money they have saved from having a business meeting here and here and here, you know, by using Zoom, which is the technology thing. And whether we end up as some kind of financial powerhouse using new tech where people through that you know, as forming who we are going forward, and getting our house straight, and pulling together as being that and using new technology sounds very interesting to me.
There's another thing with that as well, and that's just the general movement of people per se. You know, if more and more people kind of connect through things like technologies, it means there's less of a need to travel to see people. You know, so we could, as a society, become more reliant on technologies. That makes technology companies more powerful.
That's what they want to do. That's all part of the economy crashing, which we had, you know, in astrology in January. There is something called the 4th Industrial Revolution. There's something on the government website that dates back to 2017 with Matt Hancock saying that they want to embrace the 4th Industrial Revolution. And it's all about the IT. And it's quite clear we've got to start thinking very fast about cryptocurrencies. And so, yes, this is massive social reform we're seeing now. And this is why we're having the protests now as well. Because this is not all positive.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't trust the Tories one bit to deal with.
Indeed. Yeah, well,
I'm trying to find something positive because everything's so negative. Everything.
Well,
it's horrific what we're going through right now.
But I think the realization that you can connect without travel is good news for. It really means that HS2 should be stopped. You know,
I don't see any justification for that now. It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no need for a business person to get to Birmingham 20 minutes faster.
But I know my friend, he's called to meetings in New York just because for 5-minute meetings, and he has to fly over, and that for climate change, just because someone said, well, I just want to see him face to face and click their fingers, and he's got to get on a plane and do all of that. And he'd rather be at home with his family, and so that's been a positive thing for him, certainly.
Yeah.
And
So I think
the atmosphere.
We'd definitely be more techie, and we're going to be more insular. Bit more, the arts will fare well as well. We won't lose our power base, but we could find that we have less muscle in the world, and our relationship with international affairs will be thin. Okay, so have a look at America. See what we can find there. So the conjunctions taking place in America's second house. This suggests that America's having an issue to do with its values. What is a value for America? Is it the flag? Is it an American dream? Is it all of the people within its borders, or just some of the people within its borders? And if it's just some of the people in its borders, then who's more valuable than who? There's a bit of that going on in America. There's also something to do with resources as well. Obama was kind of right when he said that they're too dependent on oil. And I know that Trump's kind of pushed back. He's got all these kind of votes from the old industrial revolution companies. But the conjunction being in Aquarius in their second house of resources suggests that America might also revamp its system into a more high-tech, electrical tech, clean energy systems. That would be my thinking with that. I think they'll push the clean energy part of things and do their best to move away from oil. That's how I read that, along with a revision about how they treat all of their citizens, and do they treat all of their citizens equally? That'll be a theme, a powerful theme. And if they don't, of course, then there could be more civil unrest as a result of mistreatment of these people by those people, or those people by these people. I don't know that much about American politics, but that's how I read that. Any other things anyone wants to add in?
Yeah, I think there is sort of like a movement away from the petrodollar, and that there is an idea of having a digital dollar, which is like what we're talking about with cryptocurrency again. And so rather than backed by oil, they're looking at other structures to be backed by, and by having they're looking at to give every American citizen a digital wallet. And so that's sort of like looking after the citizen really by having a new system, but I don't know whether that's relevant or not.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
Is there? Could there be something as well with that conjunction being in the second house to do with sort of revamping a revolution, even in the way the Americans are, their relationship with the land and their custodianship of the lands they're on, the sort of Taurian side of the second house, and the Venusian side?
Yeah, there could be. They could even, if you think of Aquarius as a sign of madness as well. I know we all like to think about enlightenment, right? But Aquarius is also nuts. Remember that, and kind of raping Alaska could well be a part of that too. Just to kind of throw that in the pot. Yeah. Let's have a look at the aspects. Ooh, right. Yes, this trine to the midhaven suggests that America will get its mojo back. It will be able to achieve its ambitions, whatever those are. So that's good for America. I don't know if that's good for the rest of the world, but it's good for America. There's a pyridecum to the moon. That's good for the people. This suggests that if you think of that that conjunction happening in their second house of values and who is of value and what is of value. The Pirate Decan to the moon suggests that there'll be more of a caring disposition towards all of its citizens. I think that's a good thing. With regards to nature and its relationship with the natural world, this biseptile to the Venus suggests there'll be more compassion for nature. I like that. A more compassion towards nature. There could be more compassionate artistry as well. There could be a flourishing of the arts with a triseptile to Venus. That's good as well. A kind of a more easygoing chumminess, a friendliness, a lovingness coming out of America over the next 20 years. And that's nice. I like that. Yeah. It'd be nice to be able to fall in love with America again, wouldn't it? If we ever did, but it would be nice. And there's this biseptile to Jupiter, which suggests that the world likes America over the next 20 years. That's also nice. And there's a healing that takes place, or a deep wounding. Having a Martian aspect to Chiron, the wounded healer, suggests there could be a very quick, almost sense of urgency to fix and repair itself, to heal its own wounds, both sociologically, psychologically, within itself. But at the same time, that could also mean that if there's any aggressive action over the next 20 years, it will be swift and quick, and powerful as well. Yes. There's always like an either or when you get the wounded healer involved, especially when there's a Martian aspect to it. Right. Let's have a look at China. The reason I wanted to include China was I caught wind of China's birth chart, and I looked at I just curious. I thought I'll look at the conjunction, and I noticed something, and I thought, oh, I'll include that in today's thing. There's the conjunction for China happening in their 12th house. And which is interesting, I think. It's almost conjunct their ascendant, but not quite. So this suggests that there's something of China, if you think of it as having a deep spirit. Its philosophies go back thousands of years. And you could find that China over the next 20 years taps into that more. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing depends on your opinion of Chinese philosophies or not. But I think there's great wisdom in Chinese philosophy. And more of that could come to the fore. There could be more compassion within China as a possibility. But then the 12th house can also be a slippery thing. And so China could lose its way or lose its identity to a certain extent as well. Let's have a look at the aspects to it. The thing that struck me was this golden section to the Saturn. Right? This suggests that China is going to be the economic kiddie on the block over the next 20 years. They're going to be calling the shots completely.
I can well believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever ambitions they have, they'll achieve them with panache and aplomb. And not only that, with the trine to the part of fortune, they're going to have a good time doing it as well. There's a tridecile to the Mercury, so the communication within their own population won't be that clear. Believe it or not, they could distort their media. It's a possibility. There's a quintile to the Venus, which suggests that amongst the population there is a desire for clarity. So there could be a movement, some kind of movement within the population to want to get information to be clear, sort of, I don't know, dark web or whatever you might call it. That sort of thing could happen. There could also be a flourishing of the arts as well. And they could also have a review of how they're treating nature as well. So how they treat resources, how they treat their environment. Then there might be some kind of desire to clean up air pollution and things like that. So I think around Beijing it's really bad, isn't it? In some of the cities there, it's dreadful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be part of this Pyrrhodecum to Chiron. Again, a kind of an urgency of kind of healing their environment and treating their environment in a better way. The triseptile, the Uranus, suggests that they'll be using a lot of technologies, and they could make a lot of kind of very creative advances in technologies as well. Okay. So we've had a look at what this conjunction suggests over the last 20 years and over the next 20 years in a global sense through the lenses of 3 countries. I think what we're doing now is we'll have a 10-minute tea break. Okay. And then when we come back, we'll do exactly the same thing again, but for each of us on a personal level. All right. Has anyone got any comments on anything so far that you want to kind of just ask about or anything to say?
David, I just wanted to check with you.
Yeah.
When the conjunction happened in 1623, what house was it in for the UK again?
I didn't do it for the UK.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I was just looking at the degrees.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it would take me a while to kind of create the graphics for that, but yeah, we could do that at some point if you wanted to. Yeah. Any points, comments, questions? No? Okay. Right. We've had a little overview of this conjunction and what it might mean for the world and what it might mean for us as individuals. Have you found this little dip into something quite different?
Fascinating.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I like the focus. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'd just like to say I like the focus on the fact that you chose China and America as well to sort of focus on that. That was interesting for me from a business point of view. So thank you for that. That's very interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, the China. Oh my word.
The next one of these classes that's outside of a normal class is the UK forecast. The dates of that are set already. I haven't set up the thing for it yet, but that's on the 9th and the 16th of December. They'll both be Saturday mornings around the same time as this, and that's just focusing on the UK. Right. So the first part will look at the monarchy, the government, the economy, the people, the arts, agriculture, conflicts, that sort of thing, society in a way, and see if we can get an idea of what's going to happen for the UK over the next year. And then the second part will look specifically at the main political parties and their leaders. And we'll look at the forecasts of the parties and the forecasts of the leaders and see if we can get an idea of what we think is going to go on. You know, and yeah, form some kind of conclusion as to what is happening for the next 12 months. And one thing about last year is in January, although I'd kind of heard that there was a virus in China, it didn't cross my mind that it would travel to here, because bird flu and things didn't come anywhere near my life, and neither did swine flu or avian flu. So I kind of thought about it like that. But we noticed that Jupiter was opposing the UK's moon. And in mundane astrology, the moon represents the people, and Jupiter represents protection. So Jupiter opposing the moon means that the people's protection was diminished. And that started in February and went on until November. And I thought, you know, I was thinking about it like it's the Tories that have just got in power. What are they going to do to the disabled and the elderly that makes them more vulnerable than usual? And I thought, what's Boris going to do, you know, or Cummings or Duncan Smith, without thinking it could be a virus that does it. But just per chance, by astrological coincidence, they announced the first vaccine about a week after the transit finished. So, it's, you know, once the absence of protection had gone, the virus appeared, the vaccine appeared, sorry. That's interesting, isn't it? So one may assume there might be some things that show the rollout of all this and what might happen and any muddlements or confusions or problems. But another thing I would mention was if you've been looking at these forecasts, you know, as I do them every year, since about 2015, we've been talking about the crash of 2020. So all of my students have known there's going to be an economic crash in 2020. And I did a reading for an American financer in 2018. And in this, we're doing his personal forecast. He said, do you know when the crash is coming? And I said, yeah, I do. It's in January 2020. He said, oh, and you can see that. I said, yeah. I said, how did you know there's going to be a crash? And he said, oh, because I've been looking at the markets and you can see it coming. I went, oh, right. Okay. So he found that the astrology supported his financial vision. And I found that his financial vision supported the astrology. So we came from two completely different places and formed the same conclusion, which does mean that the basis behind the economic crash has its origin prior to the virus. If you think about it, it can't be the virus that just created the crash, because otherwise he wouldn't have seen it.
No.
Yeah, so there must have been something happening within the financial realms that I don't understand that flagged something up for this guy that he wanted to know the when. So
it wasn't to do with China moving everything around.
Well, I haven't got a clue. I don't know, because I don't know what he was looking at, and I didn't ask. And if he'd have told me, I wouldn't have understood it. To be honest, because when someone talks about money to me, I go blah, blah, I can't hear it. Right? But I just thought it interesting that these two disciplines had that same thing, but also it means that the seeds of the financial problems at the moment are older than the virus.
Well, the somebody that I know who works in China at Christmas last year was saying next year's going to be, this thing is coming and it's big and it's going to just wipe us out kind of thing at Christmas last year. And we had our first case here, they know at Christmas, but it was in December, but they know, you know, or November or something. So I think people knew a lot. But certainly just someone who's in shipping in China was already in November, and by Christmas was saying it's coming.
But there's been something coming for a very, very long time, because the entire pension fund system is a Ponzi scheme, essentially. My shameful past, I used to be a hedge fund manager, shocking, horrible, but left it over 20 years ago. But,
interesting insight, though.
Yeah, it's the whole thing is built on sand and hot air. And with the aging populations around the world, everyone paying in now is paying in their pensions to pay the pensions of the retired people today. The whole thing is grotesquely underfunded and is going to come crashing down. There's just no two ways about it. But
yeah, well, I mentioned that Pluto is going to go into Aquarius until 2023, which means that the planet of death is still in the planet of its sign of economy for another 2 years.
I liked your alien invasion possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, something's got to get the humans to rally around and actually sort themselves out. And there's nothing like an outside enemy to do it.
There's nothing like it, exactly.
Indeed, indeed. Yes, yes. Yeah. Right. We are done. I shall see you very soon. Maybe in January for the UK forecast, maybe in the next astrology cast. Take care. See you later. Bye.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.